chat, just making
Two, one. Hello and welcome to night 2 of the DNC Vice Chair Candidate Forum, which is being brought to you today by the Young Democrats of America, the DNC Youth Council, and Voters of Tomorrow. My name is Josh Rush, and I will be your host for tonight. I am a 23-year-old young Democrat currently living in Austin, Texas, originally from Salt Lake City, Utah, sort of. And throughout my life, I've had the privilege of working for fantastic Democratic candidates all around the country in 6 different states. And I am super excited to be joining you and sort of leading this discussion for everybody, because just personally, I think that the Democratic Party is at a tremendous crossroads right now. And the people who will lead us forwards from this moment it is incredibly important that we have people who lead us forward from this moment, who are listening to young people, centering their voices, but also providing us with the resources in order to take action into actually being the future of the party that lots of people like to say that we are right now, or that we will be. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our introductory speaker, Senator Mallory McMorrow of Michigan's 8th District. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Joshua, and thank you everybody for being here tonight. Real honor to be asked to help kick off this forum. I think that something that I think about a lot when I think about why our party has to engage with young people in a real meaningful way is, let's be honest, young people have the most future to look forward to. Time is coming for all of us, and when we think about all of the challenges facing young people, the biggest challenges are in their court. It is economic challenges. It's whether or not we are going to have Social Security that you can rely on, whether or not you can get a good paying job, but also the biggest challenges like climate change, gun violence prevention, healthcare, all of these things really drive young people in a meaningful way. And I feel like too often their elected officials and politicians make them feel left out or patronize young people. And as a party, we only grow when we meaningfully bring young people to the table. I am very proud in Michigan to be the Michigan Senate Majority Whip in the first democratically controlled state Senate since 1984. And I got here largely because of young people all throughout my district when I first ran for office who were so motivated by ending gun violence, high school students, that they refused to take inaction as an answer. They rallied, they helped me knock doors, they helped me push, and they inspired me every single day to accept that we have to keep fighting. So I'm really proud to have helped deliver on the first meaningful gun violence prevention legislation laws in Michigan history. So bringing people together to the table, not only to work on our campaigns, but then also as a party delivering on the back end and showing young people you are a instrumental part of this party. So to all of the vice chair candidates, thank you for stepping up and running. This is a big job. We have a huge challenge ahead of us, and young people are going to be the way that we go forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Senator McMorrow. Agreed, it is so important that we've got young folks' voices not only at the table, but ordering dinner for everybody. So a little bit about the structure and way that things will be going today. All of our candidates will be given a time to give 2 minutes of an opening remark. They'll then get 3 general questions that will be asked to each question. And then we have written a individual directed question for each candidate that they will answer, we will ask, and then closing remarks. As we ask each question, we will say the amount of time allotted for them, and we will have a timer visible on screen, I think, for only our folks in the Zoom that says how much you've got remaining. We ask all of our candidates to please be brief. We've got lots of folks to go through. We've got lots to talk about. There's obviously lots to do within our party, and we know everybody's got lots to say. We will allow you to finish your sentence if you're over time, but we please ask that you not go too far over it. We'll drop the order of folks answering questions in the chat as we go, and please say your name before you start talking. Two more things. I want to thank the Ben Wickler and Ken Martin for DNC chair campaigns for sponsoring the ASL translation, live translation that is happening for these forums. And please remember, be nice to each other. We all want better for our party. We all want to move our party forward. So we'll get started with opening remarks right now. And our first candidate to speak will be Ms. Blanco.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Josh. Thank you so much for having this. I'm Artie Blanco, and I once was a young Democrat, as we all were. And I really appreciate being part of this effort. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and home means Nevada now. And I've been part of the DNC for some time. And one of the things that I pride myself on is being that organizer, that staffer, the one that starts from the trenches, doing the work, but also lifting other people up and training the next generation. So I'm really excited to be here. One of the things that I was asked in one of the conversations that I had was, what have you been able to do in supporting of young people and young Democrats in the movement? And historically, I have always been supportive. One of the things that I will say that I try to keep in mind is that when I worked at the DNC, we actually used to have a young staffer. It was actually someone with the College Dems that was on staff and part of the political team. And we really they were as part of the team. And that person would work with every single one of us that worked at the DNC. And I want to make sure that that integration continues. When I talk about the state partnership program, that when we started it under Governor Howard Dean, it was really that partnership part of that work, and getting to meet young people that actually are still in the party process now, being county chairs, involved in their state parties, and leaders in their state parties. So I want to continue to do this work. I'm ready to roll my sleeves up and really have a voice for all Democrats, because every vote is important, and especially the future vote of the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco. We will now go to former DA Free.
Halito, I'm Kaylin Free, candidate for vice chair of the DNC. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation, the third largest Indian tribe in America. And in our culture, what we do is before we start telling folks about ourselves, we try to include in that circle and learn more about you. Unfortunately, this format doesn't give me the opportunity to do that, but I will promise you that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to the DNC as vice chair, I want to know about each one of you, because that's the only way that in my culture that we can work together. So with that said, and with those apologies, I'm going to share my history about who I am. I was born on a farm, raised on a farm in southeastern Oklahoma in the heart of the Choctaw Reservation. I grew up probably different than some of you, hauling hay, working cattle, and driving an hour in a school bus to go to a town of 600 people to go to school. I graduated, went to college. I worked nights in a convenience store, before I worked nights in a convenience store and went to school the next day, smelling like the donuts I'd made the night before. I understand the issues that young people face. I work with young people every day, and I look forward to sharing my vision to include young people in the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you, former DA Free. We'll now go to Council Chair Dietrich.
Michelle Dietrich here, and hello, young Democrats. It is so very, very good to be with you again. And thank you for another terrific organizing event, an important one. I'm Michelle Dietrich, chair of the DNC Climate Council, union member running for DNC Vice Chair, like everyone here. This has been such a sobering week and a critical time for our party and our nation. And I commit to do this work full time. I'm a farmer, a former elected official who flipped a rural red seat to blue, and it's someone who's been lucky enough, privileged enough to work with young Democrats in a range of ways, from college Democrats at Michigan universities to collaborating on great climate and environmental justice live streams and other rallies for the presidential campaign and lots more. I have a vision for the path forward and have the experience of turning out the voters we need and doing that with young Democrats. I've had the pleasure of speaking at many young Democrats conferences, collaborating on events, over 24 events in this cycle alone with young Democrats. I learn from young Democrats. They are a plus. You are a plus for the party. And we don't include you, we are the losers. We as a party, we as a country. I've been a steadfast voice and leader in calling for the inclusion of younger voters, younger Democrats in all levels of the party functions. Been calling for funding for young Democrats. I will avoid saying I walk the walk, but I've worked very hard to ensure that young people have a seat and a voice at the table and are heard. So it's a true honor to be with you today to discuss all the really important issues that are in front of our party and our nation. Thank you.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting there. We'll now go to Chair Repath. Oh,
sorry, I think you're muted.
Okay, of course, I'm the person that did the bad mute button. Let me start over. My name is Gina Repass. I'm so proud to be the chair of the Kansas Democratic Party. And I want to start out by thanking Josh, and I want to thank Bailey and Santiago and Quentin. Thank you so much for hosting us tonight. I'm so tempted to say doing the work just because you told me not to say it, that I get to the end of the day, and once you plant it in my brain, I'm like, don't say it, don't say it. So I'm just going to get out of the way. Having said that, I hope you can hear some levity in my voice. It is at the end of a workday. I finished a full workday, did a whole event tonight, and yet I am here because this is so terribly important. I am not somebody who's going to sit here and talk down to you. I have the privilege of living with 3 young Dems in my home. All 3 of them are my children. Age 21 to 34. And there's a good reason that they're living at home. The cost of living is too high. And it's not that they're not successful. We invested in our children and they are all great. My son's been on television as a broadcaster for 11 years, has moved back to Kansas City. My daughter is a medical student who, by the way, I'm so proud to say, ran for the office to direct the transgendered care night at the free clinic run by medical students. And I was so privileged to walk that walk with her and set up the free clothing clinic. And then my youngest son is a junior in college. And the reason I bring that up is because I hear from them every day. As much as they love me and like me, they are holding me accountable every single moment. So to that accountability, I have hired a young Dem on my staff as our media director. I have hired a high school intern and make sure that we always have a paid young Dem. We have a youth caucus in the Kansas Democratic Party, which our president of that youth caucus is a voting member on my executive committee. And I am currently recruiting for our next election cycle, and I'm looking for a young Dem to sit in on our executive committee. That is vice chair, actually, our vice chair has to be a union member, but our secretary treasurer. So I am making sure that there is never an opportunity that we will not have young Dems who have a voice at the Kansas Democratic Party. I'm running for vice chair because it is time to do something different. Thank you so much for the time. I look forward to answering your questions.
thank you, Chair Repass. We'll go to Chair Conrad now.
I am Shasti Conrad. Hello, Democrats. There's one thing I know to be true. When the Beltway got it wrong, we got it right. When we make ideological diversity a driving force, not a dividing line, when we champion our values and stay localized in our messaging, we win. We know what our communities need because we live and breathe it every single day. I'm the youngest chair ever of the Washington State Dems and the first South Asian woman to lead a party in the whole country, and I am proud of the West Coast, Best Coast. Last election, under my leadership, we became the only state to withstand the 2024 Republican shift. My commitment has always been to add more diverse voices to our party, particularly young people and people of color. Every one of us has a story for why we do this work. My activism began in high school, advocating for peace during the lead up to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, as I saw my friends and fellow students being sent overseas to fight in an unjust war. I was adopted from India by a single mom who was my biggest cheerleader. Suffering from kidney failure, my mom was forced to work to keep her health insurance, even with a good union job. She died just weeks away from retirement, waiting for a kidney transplant that never came. I already supported Medicare for all, but when my mom got sick, I got an up-close look at the broken state of our healthcare system. Young Dems, you know the truth. Our party needs more from youth organizing and on-the-ground perspective. We need leaders who understand that political transformation happens not in Washington, D.C., but in living rooms and on campuses across America. I've spent my life organizing, from knocking doors for President Obama, throwing concerts for Bernie Sanders, to working with Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai on global youth mobilization. And I've learned one fundamental truth: change happens when we listen more than we lecture. Your issues are my issues, and our issues win elections. I'm asking for your support because I have shown that Democrats can win and that young leaders can cultivate that success. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Conrad. We'll now go to Adam Frisch.
Good evening, everyone. I think we should call it Voices of Today, not just tomorrow, because you guys are already, and gals are already in this. And so just want to say hi real quick. Like Kayla and I have roots going back to Fort Peck Indian Reservation. My dad was in the Indian Health Service for 5 years. I've been really focused on rural America. He ended up becoming an OBGYN, one of the first to get into women's health care back in Minnesota in the mid-70s. And growing up with bomb threats and death threats from your parents is certainly eyes wide open about how important it is to try to get back some of those civil and civic rights that we all need. Some of you might know, I just spent the last 3 years driving over 75,000 miles through rural Colorado, mostly running against Lauren Boebert. Came up a little bit short, but during that attempt, one of the reasons we outperformed the top of the ticket by so much is that we had 130 high school and college students interning for our campaign that year. They made over 700,000 phone calls over that year campaign. And that was mostly spearheaded by my son, Felix, who was 16 at the time, who took off his junior year of high school and did 50,000 miles with me as we were driving around. I was on the road 20 to 25 days a month. We need to figure out how to get back rural America. It's very, very diverse. And it's also quite young as well, but we need to remember that. I am focused on what I call Project 225, which is we need 225 as a floor, not a ceiling in the House, just like we need 52 to get Speaker Jeffries to be Speaker Jeffries in reality. I'm fully aware, because I hear it from my kids and a lot of my young friends out there, the cost of living, the cost of housing, the cost of healthcare is just killing everybody, but especially our young people trying to figure out how in the world am I ever going to be able to get ahead in this world? And that's something that we need to really focus on. Very honored to have a lot of support from labor, as well as a lot of young Dems through our campaign. Excited for some conversations.
Thank you, Adam Frisch. We'll now go to Chair Barbuto.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm Joe Barbuto, and it actually wasn't that long ago that I was a young Democrat myself. In fact, as I thought about it tonight, I realized that most of my career in politics was spent as a young Democrat. Like lots of you, I'm sure I got my start knocking on doors before I could even drive, and that led to some paid positions with campaigns. In 2008, I was elected to the Wyoming State Legislature. I think I was 24 or 25 at the time, certainly the youngest member of the body at that time, and probably one of the youngest in the nation as well. That went into other opportunities. I've served as a county treasurer here in Sweetwater County. I've been a county chair, and for the last 8 years, I've been the chair of the Wyoming Democratic Party, which of course makes me a member of the DNC as well, where I've served on the Budget and Finance Committee. And you know, being from a red and rural state, that's kind of where my issues stem when it comes to the Democratic Party. We don't have a strong enough voice from that community in our national politics. And when I'm running candidates or campaigns from Wyoming, I'm up against two obstacles. One, of course, is the Republican Party, but the other is the narrative that the Republicans have created about who national Democrats are and what we stand for. We've not done enough to tell our own story about who we are and what we value. And our values are very much in line with rural America. We need to bring back that support in places like Wyoming. And every state and every region has a place like Wyoming, even if you're a blue state. And I'll tell you that young people, this matters to them because right now there's a political and cultural environment that exists in rural America that they don't find inviting and welcoming. That's our biggest export from places like Wyoming, is young people. So we need to work hard as a national party to remind folks who live in areas like this that the Democratic Party is the party that has their backs, is looking towards the future, and wants to make sure that everybody has the same opportunities to pursue opportunity, equity, and justice. But nobody else is going to tell that story for us. We have to do the work. If I could pick, I would be running for the chair of rural outreach and engagement. I mean, we need that in this party. And I think that my combination of experience and knowledge is right to be the person to lead that effort. And so I hope that we have a good discussion on it. I'm looking forward to the questions, and thanks again for having us all.
Thank you, Chair Barbuto. That concludes our 2-minute opening statements. We'll now have our first question, which is, what sets you apart from your fellow candidates for this position? We'll have 60 seconds per candidate, and we'll start with Chair Repass.
Gina Repass, and thank you. I will say to you, I don't think there's a lot of points of differentiation between us. Our values are the same. Our passion is the same. We all are good Democrats, and we all want to see change at the party. What I will speak into is that as the only red state party chair, woman, thank you, Joe, running, I have a unique perspective on what it means to be overlooked, what it means to be unheard, even though you're still doing the work. And I know young Dems can relate to that. So as a chair of a state where we are in the super minority, but I get up every day, square my shoulders to it, and get back in the fight, I think that is one of the things that I bring uniquely to the table. And by the way, I am the first ever Black woman to be a state party chair in Kansas. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Repass. We will now go to former DA Free.
Kaylin Free, thank you so much for that question. I agree with Gina. There's so much that we have in common. What sets me apart from and I'm not saying my opponents, because we're not in opposition to each other. What sets me apart from the folks I'm running with is the fact that I've worked in red and purple and blue states all across America. I've worked in over 300 campaigns. I've raised over $25 million. I have helped elect Democrats in the states of Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Missouri, Montana, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Washington, and Wyoming. I know how I appreciate what Joe said there, how difficult it is to run and win in rural America. I've done that. I continue to do that. And I know the challenges, but let me say, every one of those races that we won, every one of those people that we helped elect, I could not have done that without the Young Democrats, because they are the backbone and the lifeblood of our party.
Thank you, former DA Free. We'll now go to Council Chair Dietrich.
Michelle Dietrich, look, I'm going to agree. This is an amazing, wonderful group of people, good Democrats, and all of us want to see our party succeed, and most important, win again. So I'll just say this. I'm a union member. I've been an elected official who flipped a rural red seat to blue. I'm an elected and unanimously re-elected leader of DNC Council. I am from a swing state. I live in a rural district. I am a farmer. I founded and I lead a very active, effective DNC Council, the DNC Environment and Climate Crisis Council. Councils and caucuses are bridges to our wider democratic community, whether issue-based or identity-based. So I'm also calling for a 10-year review of our party's electoral spending and strategy on which to base our strategy going forward. And I will do this work full-time.
Thank you, Chair Dietrich. We'll now go to Ms. Blanco.
Hey, thank you. We are all Dems. I think when you look at those of us that are running for vice chair, we know that this is a volunteer gig and we do it because it's our heart and our passion. So one of the things I'll say is that sets me apart is I'm the only Latino running for a vice chair position, born and raised in Houston, Texas, and hearing from and living in Nevada, hearing about the post-election, about how we're losing certain communities like the Latino community and the young voters. That's one of the reasons why I want to get into and do this work. I want to listen to our communities, young people, Latinos, African American, everyone, every community that we need to turn out. When I really say that it's about reaching all voters, it really is about reaching all voters. And the first thing we need to do is listen. And I remind myself every day I need to stop and I need to listen, because that's the best way we can all learn.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco. We'll now go to Chair Barbudo.
Yeah, thank you. Joe Barbudo here again. I think that probably what sets me apart the most from a very wonderful, talented, exceptional group of people is that, everything I've done politically, I've done in an environment that is particularly and consistently challenging for Democrats. Wyoming is not a beacon of hope when it comes to progressive principles. And I always say that Wyoming Democrats are some of the most, the toughest and most resilient in the nation because of that. But the truth is, I understand rural America on a very personal level because it's what I live every day. I know that the struggles that people in communities like mine have to deal with. Simple things. Yesterday, I had to drive 6 hours to go to a 1-hour appointment in Salt Lake City to see a doctor. That's our life every day. I know what it's like to watch neighbors and friends and families vote consistently against their best interests in ways that aren't just bad for me politically, but are bad for their lives and livelihood. And that hurts. And so it's always a good reminder to me that we're not doing this work to win elections. That's the how. We're doing this work to improve lives in our states and our communities and our nation. And I think when we look at it through that lens, if we keep our focus there, then we understand why rural America is so important to our cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Barbudo. Now we will go to Chair Conrad.
Shasti Conrad, thank you so much. I think, first of all, I am winning in my state. I am a full-time state party chair who has a track record of success. I have played multiple roles in this ecosystem, from being a full-time state party chair now, but I was a county party chair for 4 years before. I've run for office. I've worked on 4 presidential campaigns. I worked in Georgia on a congressional campaign. I've worked in the White House. I've been in all those levels, and I've been in places where we have been winning and we have been up, and I've also been in those places when it's been really tough and we haven't. Yes, I say I proudly come from a blue state where we are winning, but underneath that blue is a hell of a lot of red. And we are a very rural state in Washington, and we have been able to figure out ways to win in those places. There's more work to be done. And I also want to make sure that I'm representing the West. There's not enough of us, and the West hasn't always had a seat at the table. And I'm going to bring that energy, and also as the only Asian woman that's running for a seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Conrad. And we will go to Adam Frisch as our last answerer for this question.
Adam Fisher, thanks. As people have inferred, I'm honored to be running alongside, not against these other fine candidates for sure. And as everyone figures out, one of the joys we have is filling out up to 3 of those little ballots there. So keep that in mind as you try to figure out how to balance that whole. I am the only person who spent the last 3 years driving and talking to 75,000 miles worth of people out there. It's been like a 75,000 mile focus group in a district that's registration is 22% Democrat. And building that coalition, getting Project 225, getting Speaker Hakeem Jeffries the gavel, these are all the things that I can bring. And even though we've been one of the most prolific fundraisers in the entire country, raising $17 million, I was able to do it without any corporate PAC money whatsoever. We just celebrated the Citizens United thing. I'm proud to be endorsed by Citizens United and term limits and have an average donation of literally under $30, raising a lot of money, $30 at a time. I'll be able to bring that to the party.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. We'll now go to our second question, which is, what does the Democratic Party need to do differently? Every candidate will have 60 seconds to answer. We've already distributed the list of questions, the list of who will answer when, and we'll start with Chair Conrad.
Well, first of all, obviously, we have to deal with the fact that we did lose in the majority of this country, not by that much. And so I think we need to be careful not to throw the entire thing out. But I think we definitely need to make sure that we are innovating in our strategies, that we are finding new media spaces to be in, that we are working with young people to make sure that we are actually speaking to young people in a way in which resonates with young people, and that we are not just telling young people what they should be doing or how they should be going. We need to be bold. We need to be able to stand up. I think what people like the most about Trump, unfortunately, is that he is unrelenting and he is exactly who he is. We as Democrats, I think sometimes try to shy away from the hard stuff, and we have got to be leaning in. You've seen already just in these last few days what the administration is going to be up to. We have got to be not only a beacon of hope, but we're going to have to be a full support system that is blocking and making sure that we are pushing to win, but be there for people through this tough time.
Thank you, Chair Conrad. We will now go to Chair Barbuto.
Well, I don't think that my answer is going to surprise you too much. I think one of the biggest mistakes we've made is not to fully engage rural America. And I don't want to just talk about the battleground states, but I'm going to just for a moment. Just in those battleground states, had we been able to turn out just a few more percentage points of support for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, then we would have been telling a different story last Monday in this nation. But we didn't do that. And at the end of the day, in our traditional areas, there's just so much you can do to expand the base without including rural America. So we need to go back. We need to have meaningful conversations with those communities. Don't go, our natural instinct as Democrats is to go and talk facts and figures and tell them why we're right, but that's not what they need. They need someone who will come in and listen. And this includes a lot of young people, by the way, listen to what their realities are, what they're facing, their opportunities, their struggles, and then remind them about why our values match their values and why it's our party that has their back. But if we're not engaging rural America, then we're just not doing the job that we need to do to support every corner of this country.
Thank you, Chair Barbuto. And we'll now go to Council Chair Dietrich to answer the question, what does the Democratic Party need to do differently?
I like that music intro for myself. Thank you. Look, Michelle Dietrich, as a party, we can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome. I have a full plan for what I will advocate for as vice chair that we need to do differently. You can see it at michellefordnc.org. michellefordnc.com, sorry. And in that plan, you'll see I call for a 10-year review of the party's strategy. A lot of things that went wrong in this election were long-term trends. We call for a plan to reform the DNC internally, a plan to run a year-round permanent campaign, completely rethinking our comms strategy. We need a nimble media strategy that responds to the rapidly evolving and diversifying media market. We need to invest in state parties and in county parties. We have thriving county party organizations in barely 300 of the 3,100 plus counties in the US. Invest in the party's youth organizations and leverage and empower.
Thank you, Chair Dietrich. And we'll now go to Ms. Blanco to answer, what does the Democratic Party need to do differently?
Sure. First thing is we need to acknowledge our shortcomings. We need to acknowledge where we missed the mark. And we need to listen to those voters. We need to bring them into the fold and have real authentic conversations, first listening and not being afraid of a topic to have a real conversation. Bring back the partnership of the state party partnership program. And I really want to make sure that we're ensuring that we are fully staffing the DNC with organizers and staff that are hungry, that want to go out into the states and not only work from the DNC building, but go out into the states in the trenches with the organizers that we're helping to fund and the candidates that are out there doing the work and hitting those rural communities. I agree. That's what we need to do. I feel like we need to really look at how we're investing, and we're really still building a continuity within the DNC. So we are creating a new DNC culture.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco. And we will now go to former DA Free.
We need to do three things. We need to expand the map, invest in long-term infrastructure, and restore our grassroots. We lost 30 years ago, we allowed the Republican Party to go into the states and start working and winning races from the school board all the way up to the White House. We ceded that. We no longer care at the DNC for whatever reason about investing in red states and investing down ballot. I played a pivotal role in helping elect the first African-American mayor to the city of Tulsa. He will tell you he would not have won if it hadn't been for me believing in him and helping him put money in his campaign coffers. That's 103 years after the Greenwood massacre. knocking on the doors, and I've over $25 million, folks. I'm a raiser. The DNC slammed doors in my face when I was asking for help to elect the first African-American mayor. That is wrong. We need to play everywhere, rebuild our bench, and start electing a diverse body politic. That's what I will do as vice chair of the DNC.
Thank you, former DA Free. And we'll now go to Adam Frisch to answer, what does the Democratic Party need to do differently?
Win. I mean, that's the party. A party is set up to win and not to do much else than that. And from there, we go on from there. And that's why the goals have to be, how do you build a coalition to win? Couple things. We got to make sure that we find a better slate of candidates that can really sincerely and authentically get to the communities where people feel left behind. And we have a huge diverse party, and somehow that diversity does not always fall into place when it comes to the county chairs and the state chairs. And the vast majority of people voting are only going to know the county people, the neighborhood people, the precinct people, and the state parties. They're not going to know who these 450 members, with all due respect to the DNC chairs, are. So thank you so much for being involved at a young age, but we need to figure out how to empower down and out, and try to figure out and ask people who are the best people that we should be running in Washington in some of those red places. And the same thing with Joe in Wyoming. We have some boots on the ground people that can do this, and we need to find them. And that's empowering at the regional level.
Thank you, Adam Frisch. And we'll go to our final answerer for this question. That is Chair Repass.
Thank you, Chair Gina Repass. I'm going to give you two very direct answers. One of those is we have to become truth tellers. We need to look ourselves in the mirror and tell ourselves the truth. And we didn't do that. And then we need to be fighters. And I mean this sincerely. The reason I'm running for DNC Vice Chair is the day after the election, when I was on the phone with my governor and my congresswoman, and everyone in the state was literally apoplectic. All I wanted to do was fight and fight back. And we have lost that. We have lost the ability to look ourselves in the eye and tell ourselves the truth. We're up against someone who is willing to lie, cheat, steal, harass people. And then we're fighting with Marquess of Queensberry rules, and they're out there in a bare knuckle fight. Democrats need to fight back, square our shoulders to the wind and say, this is our country. And we need to tell each other the truth when we are messing up and we have missed the mark. That's what we need to do. We got to start from the basics. We got to be fighters, we got to be bold, and we got to be truth tellers. That's what we need to do differently moving forward.
Thank you, Chair Repass. That concludes our second question. We'll roll right into the third one, which is, how will you amplify youth voices at every level of the party? And we will start with Adam Frisch.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is call up the 130 people that volunteered for our campaign in 2022, and a bunch of them worked for us in 24. Continue to work with my son, Felix, who took a year off before going off to college to take a gap year to work on this initiative as when we were running in 24. Now he and I are working in our day jobs to make sure that we can try to find how to get that 225 win for Hakeem Jeffries, as well as try to in the Senate, as well as we get ready for 28. It is trying to make sure that the youth councils are even more empowered, whether it gets into a caucus or council of state. We can figure that out a little bit later on, but we need to inspire people. And I'm here just to apologize that the vast majority of people maybe on this call and younger people, they only know politics from Donald Trump and beyond. There's a whole world out there where we can back to civil discourse and having conversations with people across the aisle to really inspire people and try to figure out where most people are and try to really, really win. And it's empowering the younger voters through councils and caucuses to get going.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. We will now go to Chair Conrad. The question is, how will you amplify youth voices at every level of the party? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you, Shasti Conrad. First of all, I see my role as a vice chair at large is to help to be sort of the go-between for all the DNC members and the caucuses and the councils to have a voice up with the chair. We serve at the pleasure of the chair to some degree. And so I want to make sure that I'm working with all of the caucuses, the councils, but also the young Dems, the high school Dems, the college Dems, Voters of Tomorrow, other of these youth organizations, to make sure that you all have a seat at the table. And you don't, people say voice of the voiceless, you all have voices. It's just about who has access to a microphone. And that's what I see that this job is. I definitely want to make sure, and I've met with all of the representatives on the DNC from the college Dems, from from the high school Dems, from the young Dems. We've had conversations about making sure that you all have a line item in the budget and that there is funding for your organizations, that we are helping to build out your chapters. And I also want to uplift the all of these chapters that are happening in the states and making sure that we're lifting up the youth caucuses in the different states.
Thank you, Chair Conrad. We will now go to Ms. Blanco. The question is, how will you amplify youth voices at every level of the party?
Well, first, I want to make sure I'm hearing from you, from the youth, on what is it that you want to engage with in the Democratic Party? What first brought you to the Democratic Party? And I want to learn if our messaging is off, how the Democratic Party should be communicating with young voters. That's how we need to lift them up, bringing you into the planning process and the partnership process. I already talked about how we should make sure that we actually have college Dems, team members that are embedded in the DNC with the political staff, not only doing young voter outreach, but also just part of the political staff in general, know what is happening and being that voice to lift up to ensure that we are talking to this very important electorate moving forward. So really, I don't want to pretend like I know what it is. I just know I want to bring you in and I want to hear you out.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco. We'll now go to Council Chair Dietrich to answer, how will you amplify youth voices at every level of the party?
Love this question, and it's not a theoretical question for me. I have the pleasure and privilege of already getting to do this at the DNC Council, which I founded and chair. We've included youth voices since day one with a dedicated seat for youth director. We organize with young Dems, live streams, live events, college events, including younger voices, including lead positions as we develop policy and strategy. As DNC Vice Chair, I will double down on this approach. The fact that our party has lost ground with younger voters is unconscionable and is a direct result of too many in DC not trusting or listening to the young leaders in our party. If I'm Vice Chair, I will do everything in me to ensure that that will end. We need to invest more in every young Democratic organization and in the DNC Youth Council. We need to listen more, learn more, need to structure DNC meetings and the organization to ensure the building of relationships. I will fight like hell to ensure young voters and Dems have a seat at the table and are listened to, not just performative. This is substantive.
Thank you, Chair Dietrich. We will now go to Chair Repass to answer the question, how will you amplify youth voices at every level of the party? 60 seconds.
Thank you for the question, Gina Repass. Well, first of all, I'm already doing it. You come to Kansas, I would love for any of you guys to reach out to my Kansas Young Dems caucus leader, Emma Perkins, so she'll be the first to testify. And let me say this, show me your budget and I'll tell you your values. In Kansas, our Young Dems don't pay to come to our conferences. They get to come for free. And I was at the Young Dems conference in Boston, and they were telling me the Young Dems there, their annual conference, were saying they can't even afford to stay at the places the DNC holds. I agree with Chair Conrad. We need to have budgeted line items. If we really care about young Dems and want to hear those voices, why don't we take some of that $2 billion we raised and make sure that there's money there to get our young Dems at the table? And I will do for you what I'm going to do for myself as a Red State Party Chair. I will be a voice at the table that will not be ignored. Your voices will not be ignored. But we've got to get money in there for you, with you. And I promise you, if you come to Kansas, you will ask my young Dems. I am an advocate, an ally, and a fighter. You are our future. And if we don't speak up, we have no future.
Thank you, Chair Repass. We'll now go to Chair Barbudo to answer the question, how will you amplify youth voices at every level of the party?
I think that the answer here is to create the same kind of partnerships we do with state and territory parties, and making sure that youth organizations, including the ones here, but others that have been mentioned, like the high school Democrats and the college Democrats, have the training, the resources, and the funding they need to organize in every state, to work with the state parties to ensure that they have active chapters of those groups that are able to do that work. They have the knowledge, the training, and the funds to do it effectively. There's no perfect answer here, and there's no just one right answer, but I think that's a big step forward. And as a member of the Budget and Finance Committee, that is something when they're talking about placing an item in the budget for youth groups, that's something I've advocated for in the past on that committee as a state chair, and I would certainly do as a vice chair as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Barbudo. And for our last answerer for this question, we'll go to former DA Free.
I agree 150% with what my friend Gina Repass just said. I've raised over $25 million. If I'm elected vice chair of the DNC, I will promise you that I will dedicate my time to raising money, to making sure that our young Democrats are not shut out. I know what it's like. Many of us know what it's like. I was talking to a DNC member yesterday, and he said, I can't afford to stay at the Gaylord. Well, none of us can really afford to stay at the Gaylord. Let's just be honest about that, okay? But we know campaign manager is a young Democrat. She's a young woman who I started working with 12 years ago. She told me she wouldn't still be involved if it wasn't for me. Again, we cannot win these races without young Democrats. We shouldn't expect YDs to volunteer. We shouldn't expect them to go for free. The last thing I want to say is it's not just about a seat at the table. I ran campaign camps, and I call it from the table to the ticket. That's what we need. We need young Democrats on the ticket as well. As vice chair, I will make sure that I recruit, train, and give them.
Thank you, former DA Free. We'll now be doing a personalized question round. We've written individual questions for each one of our candidates here. And we'll be having some special guests from our allied organizations, the DNC Youth Council, the Young Democrats of America, and Voters of Tomorrow to ask some of those questions. So I'll introduce our first asker, which is Nakshatra Mohan.
Thank you so much, Josh. This question is for Chair Conrad. As a state party chair, you have existing commitments to the Democrats of your state. How will you balance that and the demands of serving as DNC vice chair? You have 2 minutes to answer.
Thank you, Shasti Conrad. When I was thinking about running for this seat, I reached out to my executive director of the Washington State Democrats and my senior team, and I said, look, I want to do this, but if I'm going to do this, I need to have your full support because I need to make sure that we have what we need taken care of in Washington State. And they all said, Shasti, do it. That is the gift of having a full-time staff, that is having a professional staff that is all year round, that is ready to go. In fact, I'm running for both offices right now. I get reelected as state party chair this weekend. No one's running against me, so it should be fine. And so, this is the job. I am a full-time paid chair, one of only 10 in the entire country. When I first became chair 2 years ago, I was one of 7, which was shocking to me. I do not know how anybody does this work without being full-time and without making a good salary. I think that the salary part of it is incredibly important because I don't come from money. I don't have I don't have anything. This is work that I do, and this is how I make my living. This work is incredibly important to me. I wake up thinking about the Democratic Party. I go to sleep thinking about the Democratic Party, for better or for worse. And this is what I'm going to bring to the National Party. I'm completely dedicated to doing this work, to working both in my state. I love my state. It's so beautiful. But also I wanted to make sure I was bringing our lessons from Washington to the other Washington and making sure that we were building at the National Party as well. I'll save time there, but I wanted to just say, I've got this. We will do this together, and I'm excited to be a part of this work. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Now I'll pass it on to Nathaniel Block, member of DNC Youth Council for the Western Region.
Good evening. Former DA Free, the next question is for you. Your campaign materials say, quote, "We lost our party when the Republican National Committee developed a strategy to win races down ballot all over the country. What concrete steps do you believe the DNC should take to execute on a down ballot winning strategy?" You have 2 minutes to answer.
Thank you. So I started an organization called Indians List, and what we did is we recruited and trained Native American candidates to run for office. I had other folks come to my campaign camps that were non-Indians as well, and we also trained them. But what we did is we identified people who, some of them had never ever thought about running for office, but we found them through lots of ways and lots of circles, and we encouraged them to run for office. We gave them the skills and the tools that they needed to run winning campaigns. I had campaign camps that were 5-day long campaign camps in Minnesota. I had campaign camps in California. These were on Indian reservations. I did what I call my table to the ticket, where I did 1- and 2-day campaign camps. I just trained 2 weekends ago about 35 people. I still do this. I don't run Indians List anymore, but I still do this. And that is what our party should be doing. My friend Adam Frisch, win campaigns. And that is absolutely our job. And the best way, the only way really to win campaigns is to give candidates the tools that they need to run successful winning campaigns. And we can absolutely do that. And it's really about recruiting. And sometimes we have to tell people, you know what, this isn't a race you need to be in. But when we find those good candidates, just like I mentioned, Mayor Monroe Nichols in Tulsa, we have to give them the tools and the skills they need to run winning campaigns. And 95% of the time, that means investing in our young people, not expecting them to do the work for free, but to train them and give them the skills and the financial resources so that they can go out and knock those doors, do the digital ads, and be a real part of the campaign plan.
Thank you, former DA Free. Josh, I believe we're going back to you.
Thanks, Nathaniel. Our next question will be for Council Chair Dietrich. And our question for you is, most Democrats, even among activists, will never interact with the party's caucus and council system. And the largest reach councils and caucuses usually get is every 4 years at the national convention. As a council chair, how do you propose that the DNC use councils and caucuses more effectively? And how will you support those efforts as vice chair? You have 2 minutes.
I was already unmuted. Look, this is a terrific question. The DNC's caucuses and councils are completely underutilized resources. And as I talk to DNC members across the country, they are so eager to engage in the caucuses and councils, to do outreach, and also to listen. These are, some of them, both the identity-based caucuses and the issue and based councils. We've got a youth council, we've got a labor council, we have a poverty council, we have, of course, the climate council. This is an opportunity, and with some funding to help with outreach, some travel, a guaranteed budget with accountability, of course, we can build two-way bridges to make sure that the the Democratic Party is inclusive. And I actually think that the work that YDA is doing through its caucuses and councils is a great model for how this can work. And I love when I see the caucuses and councils in YDA working with their counterparts in the DNC. So it can also help to build that divide that we've been talking about. The DNC Climate Council has worked very, very closely with the YDA Environmental Council and with the DNC Youth Council to do events and outreach. So, we need to grant them a budget. We need to make sure that they are empowered and get to work.
Thank you, Chair Dietrich. Our next question is for Chair Repass, and that is, as a state party chair, you have existing commitments to the Democrats of your state. How will you balance that and the demands of serving as a DNC vice chair? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. And first of all, let me say thank you for these questions. These are individualized questions. And I will tell you, I've been on a lot of forums, and this is the first time that I have heard people reaching into us. It shows me that you care, that you did your research, and that you are interested actually in me as a candidate. So let me stop and say thank you for that. It means the world to me. I want to echo what Chair Conrad said. We do have a full-time paid staff year-round here in Kansas. And I have invested, by the way, my ED is just a year outside of being in the Young Dems anymore. So what I have committed to the state of Kansas is that I have a party and a staff here that is ready to go because I've done the work. I've built the infrastructure here. I'm never going to take my eye off the ball in Kansas. I just can't. We are the last bastion of states in the Midwest that still has a Democratic governor. I should say the Plains that still has a Democratic governor. When Kathleen Sebelius was our governor, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas all had Democratic governors. Kansas is the last one standing. We're the last state right now where you can get abortion access care. Even though Missouri just had a ballot initiative, the legislature and the DA or the Attorney General are fighting that. So Kansas is important. But if I don't step out and do this work and commit to it, no one else will. We can't get from where we are to where we want to go if I'm just holed up in Kansas and saying, okay, we're okay here. I will dedicate the time there because I have a staff and have built the infrastructure to be able to run. The true sign of leadership is what happens when you're not in the room. And I know that I can be in other rooms and Kansas is going to be just fine. And I will make that commitment because I am willing to go where people need to go to get our party back. So thank you for the question, but I have built the infrastructure so that I can go and do this work.
Thank you, Chair Repass. Our next personalized question is for Adam Frisch. Adam, you described President Biden's attempt at student loan forgiveness as, quote, reckless. This election, Democrats saw a backslide among young voters who often viewed the Democratic Party as having failed to deliver meaningful results for our generations. How can young voters in this election trust that you can advocate for young folks at the highest levels of our party when you have already gone against a core issue to so many? You have 2 minutes.
No, thanks for bringing that up. First of all, cost of living for education is spiraling out of control. So I'm not saying that there's not a problem, but putting $500 billion in without any congressional oversight, which we have a current president doing, to me is just going to make college more expensive. One. Two-thirds of the people that are of college age are not going to college. And you talk to plumbers and ranchers and other people that are post high school, and they are not being supported, to me is a really, really bad idea. Three, a good amount of the money, as was written by President Biden, was going to go to some of the wealthiest families in the country. If the conversation would have been focused on those families that are making $100,000 or less, or Pell Grants or some type of focus, I think that would have been a much more interesting conversation. But when for every $1 going to a family making less than $100,000, there are $3 going to people making more than $200,000. And so to me, it was a well-meaning, big-hearted idea, but it was completely done in the wrong way. It's trying to figure out how to reduce costs, which is number one. And it's no wonder why we continue to lose non-college educated voters, which there are two-thirds of those, two-thirds of the adults in the United States are not having a four-year college degree, and we need to look after them as well. And two, a lot of that college money was going to end up going to pretty darn well-off families, and we need to figure out how to get first-generation families and those families that are not able to afford college without it, to try to figure out how to focus on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Frisch. We will now go to Ms. Blanco for her personalized question. In the last election, Trump made high-profile gains among not just rank-and-file union members, but even some union leaders. Based off your experience with the AFL-CIO, how do you believe the Democratic Party can win back those people without employing some of the tactics Trump has chosen to, like scapegoating immigrants? You have 2 minutes to answer.
Sure. This is a great question. In my work, honestly, I think what we have to do is combat. It's part of what I was talking about when I talk about message delivery and figuring out what are the messages of working people and what working people really need. Right now, we're trying to figure out what is actually going to hurt working people and do an education component campaign. Really, the party has to get back to the basics, right? Which is the year-round conversations around issues that actually matter to working people, and then talk to them about those issues and what our values as the Democratic Party is. Too often, when we do polling, we know that many voters agree with our values. However, it's the way that we are delivering our message and where we are delivering our message. That's why engaging hard to reach voters is going to be key. And union members are some of those voters, not the only voters. And so really getting back to the basics. I'll say my first job, I started working part-time for my congressman in Houston, Texas. He was one of a good number of Democrats that voted against NAFTA, which took out a lot of manufacturing jobs out of this country, and we still continue to see the results today. So really, we need to get back to those working family issues and have real conversations, authentic conversations, not share with them what we want them to believe in, but taking what their concerns are and sharing where the Democratic values are and identify those Democrats that actually work to make those needs real.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco. And now our final personalized question will be for Chair Barbudo. And that question is, as a state party chair, you have existing commitments to the Democrats of your state. How will you balance that with the demands of serving as a DNC vice chair? You have 2 minutes.
Well, great. Well, first of all, I just need everybody to smile real quick because I want to take a screenshot. And then I'll answer your question. Mine actually is pretty easy for this one. Long before I decided to run for vice chair of the DNC, I'd actually made a commitment not to run for re-election this May as chair of the Wyoming Democratic Party. So I don't, others who can do and want to do both jobs, I think that's wonderful. For me, I wanted to be able to concentrate on one political endeavor at a time. I've been a volunteer chair for the last 8 years. And so I think that for me, I didn't feel like my time was best divided. So if I'm elected, I'm supposed to say when I'm elected, this will be my job in politics for the duration of the next 4 years. And I think that that's important because I don't want to be the kind of vice chair, and I don't think anybody here does, who is sitting behind a table on a dais smiling and nodding while other people speak. I want to be the kind of vice chair who's going out there and doing the work that needs to be done. I want to go out there and be the person leading that effort to engage with rural communities and voters across the nation and lead these discussions about their values and our values and do just what everybody here has been talking about, re-engage meaningfully with Democrats and non-Democrats across this country. And I can do that if this is what I'm concentrating on solely. So that's my plan moving forward.
Thank you, Chair Barbudo. We'll now start with our closing remarks. We're almost done, everyone. Our closing remarks will go for 60 seconds. Each candidate will have a turn, and we will start with former DA Free.
Helito, am I on? There we go. I have a record of raising money and winning races that the DNC and the consulting class have ignored. I've raised over $25 million. I've worked on over 300 campaigns across the country. I want to tell you about just a few of the first. The first was I elected myself as the first Native American woman and the first woman DA in southeastern Oklahoma. I helped elect the first Native American woman to the Pennsylvania State House, the first Native American woman to the Washington State Senate, the first openly gay man to the Oklahoma State House, and later the Senate, the first woman to the statewide in Montana. The only way we are going to earn back the trust of the American people is to start listening to all of them again. And that is how we win. That is the role of the DNC, is to win elections. I ask for your vote for vice chair of the DNC. Chipiso Achike, Yakoki.
Thank you, former DA Free. We'll now go to Chair Barbudo for your closing statement. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you again for hosting tonight. Throughout my political career, I have raised the dollars that are hard to come by. I've knocked on the doors that aren't always friendly, and I've time and time again stuck out my neck for this party because I truly believe this party is the best vehicle to deliver the kind of hope and opportunity and future that this nation needs. But right now we're missing a key component of that by letting other people define who we are and tell our story about what we stand for. And it can't go on and expect us to win. And so we need folks in our national party leadership who are willing to go out there and change that narrative and start making gains again in communities that we've lost. And again, remind them that the Democratic Party is the party that cares about them, not just for raising dollars, not just for winning elections, but for transforming their lives and making their community, states, and nations better. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Chair Barbudo. For our next closing statement, we will have Adam Frisch. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for being on here as fellow candidates. It's great to see everyone again, as well as the young people out there as well. Please follow up with me any questions you have at my website, which I think everyone will get, or my email and everything else like that. I just want to continue on. We lost rural young people. We lost male young people. We lost non-college young people as well. And I know a lot of people on this call are on this path of college, which I think is wonderful, as I was and my kids are. But we need to figure out how to build a coalition that is authentic and sincere for everybody. And it was a real honor to have a lot of union support, including and especially from SEIU and AFL-CIO. They were really happy with some of the stances I had, not just about the education conversation, because obviously college is spinning out of control, but it was not fun asking for President Biden to step down as well. It was the right thing to do. And sometimes leadership is about standing up and believing what's true. And that's what you learn after 75,000 miles on the road. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. We'll now go to Council Chair Dietrich for your closing statement. You have 1 minute.
Michelle Dietrich, thank you for hosting, giving me this opportunity to engage with these terrific questions. After watching the parade of awfulness already coming from this new administration, we know that opposing them is going to take electing party leaders who can give their all to this role. I was born to a Latina teenage mom and a telephone lineman in a rural town. I started working at age 12 to help support my family. Hard work is in my blood. I am all in, and I truly believe our party will win again. And soon. I am looking forward to continuing to work very closely with Young Democrats. We know young voters are and Young Democrats are the future of our party and the nation. We needed to be guided by and work with you as we do this huge task in front of us. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Michelle Dietrich, and I'm absolutely honored to be here.
Thank you, Council Chair Dietrich. We'll now go to Ms. Blanco for her opening statement. You have 1 minute.
Closing statements. Yes, I am a first.
Closing statement. My bad. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm a first-generation Mexican-American, second-generation union member and activist, and I'm running for vice chair because I'm ready to get to work alongside our next chair so we can get back to basics and reimagine the Democratic Party. What reimagine means? This means investing in year-round organizing, engaging hard-to-reach voters, and expanding our message and our delivery methods. One that speaks with what Americans care about, and we need to do this by listening, learning, and building relationships in order to expand our Democratic electorate. I'm Artie Blanco, and I'm asking for your vote for vice chair because I want to put my 25 years of organizing experience to help our next DNC chair execute our shared vision, and most importantly, to win elections. Every vote matters. Every vote counts. I want to be there and do this work. Even as a volunteer, I am dedicated and ready to go.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco. For our next closing statement, we will go to Chair Repass. You have 1 minute.
I was waiting for the music to stop. Thank you so much again to you all for hosting us tonight. What a great forum. And I'm telling you, we've all been sitting in on a lot of them. Very well done. I want to say this. I'm going to quote Barack Obama. This next generation is better than we are. And I can tell you, I live with young Dems. You are better than we were at your age. My mother was 14 years old when she started sneaking out of the house as a civil rights activist to fight for the dignity of humanity in this country. I stand on those shoulders, and I'm doing this because of what she did and the rights that she fought for that are being taken away from us right now. I want to end with this. This is how I always end when I'm talking to Kansas Democrats. I'm going to say this to you, young Dems. I have bad news for you and good news for you. Here's the bad news. No one is coming to save us. And here's the good news. We get to save ourselves. Now is the time that we step up and use our voices. We know what we've got in front of us. And if my mom could do it at the age of 14, we can do it now. We get to play the hero in our own story. And that's why I'm running to be a DNC vice chair. I will not sit in the shadows anymore. I will not be ignored, and I won't allow you to be ignored. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this great forum.
Thank you, Chair Repass. And for our final closing statement, Chair Conrad, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Shasti Conrad, and I want to be your next DNC vice chair. Young leaders are driving change in their communities every single day, and it's time the Democratic Party not only listens, but puts us all at the table. I am proud to have the support of voters of tomorrow, members of the Young Dems, College Dems, and High School Dems. I'm committed to investing in youth engagement, amplifying diverse voices, and building a party that takes action on the issues that matter most to the next generation. Together, we can create a more inclusive, forward-thinking Democratic Party that reflects the energy and vision of young people across across the country. And I'm ready to fight for that future, and I do ask for your support. We have an opportunity where I don't have to just say like, oh, I have this random connection to young people. I am still, probably for another 6 months, still in a little bit of the category of young people, and I'm doing the work. I spent Monday, instead of watching that horrible thing that was happening in the other Washington, I spent it with my Washington high school Democrats at a unify and organize event that they started planning the day after Election Day. That is what the work calls us all to be doing. I'm proud to be in this with all of you, and I hope to get your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Conrad. That concludes our forum for the evening. I just want to say thank you so much to our 2 ASL translators who we had, our incredible candidates both tonight and last night, and to our amazing folks at the DNC Youth Council, Young Democrats of America, and Voters of Tomorrow for putting this together. Special shout out to Santiago, Andre, Bailey, Eve, our host from last night, and Quentin, Steph, and everybody else who put this together. I think the future of our party is in extremely strong hands with all of you who will eventually make it through this election, and everybody who will continue to organize after. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for centering young voices and young people in the future of our party. And we can't wait to see what we do next. Thank you.